Hello friends, welcome to another episode of Automation Digest. Today we'll be talking about relative locators. What is locators? We have already known to identify any web element, we require locators. Also talked about 8 locators, which was provided by Selenium. After Selenium 4, we have 5 relative locators, which Selenium provides. Relative locator is helpful when we are unable to identify an element by constructing the traditional locators, but it would be easy to identify such elements if we describe spatially where the element is present. So we identify an element in relation with another element which is easy to find with traditional locator approach. Selenium uses get bounding client React to identify the position of any element, which returns a DOM React, basically the smallest rectangle possible, which can contain the whole element. Now, the relative locator uses this information to identify the element in question. There are 5 relative locators. Apart from these 5 relative locators, we can also chain relative locators. Let's say we have an application with these 9 elements. Now, the middle element or the one marked in black is easy to identify using a traditional locator. And now we want to find the other elements with the help of the middle element. So how do we use these relative locators? If I use above, I will be getting details of these 3 elements. If I use below, I'll be getting the details of below 3 elements. If I use toLeftOf, I'll be getting the details of left 3 elements. Similarly, if I use toRightOf, I will be getting the 3 elements on the right. If I use near, all the elements are basically near to the middle element. So we can use any of these relative locators to identify whichever element we want. Let's write down some code using these 5 relative locators. Let's say we want to automate this page using relative locators. We have to definitely close this no thanks. So let me do that for now. I have also written the code till here. Let us say we want to identify Google search, or it is identifiable using the traditional locator, and the other elements has to be identified using the relative locator. For Google search, let's use CSS selector. Perfect. It's a one-of-one match. I'll be using this locator first. Once I've closed the frame for sign in and move to the parent frame or the default context, I'll be first finding the element for Google search. How do I know that I have identified the correct one? So let me use JavaScript to highlight the element which are identified. Let's execute till here to verify. Perfect. It is identifying Google search. Once it has identified Google search, let's say we want to print all the links which are present below Google search, which would include all the links related to languages and the links in the footers. Let's find that out. Before we do that, we have to also make sure that the highlight goes off. So let us have a wait of 2 seconds and then we will remove the highlighter. Perfect. This should do our task. Once we are done with this, we have to use relative locator to identify all the links present below the element identified. Let's say we want the list of web element, which means we have to use find elements and then print the text of every link. To use relative locator, inside find elements, we have to use with. The return type of with is relative by. Inside with, we provide by. And here, because we want to identify all the links, let's use by tag name. This should be below the element. So there are 2 options. The method is overloaded by either web element or by. In this case, because we have already identified the element in line number 26, we will just use the exact same web element. Now, let's print the elements text. For readability, let me add few beautifiers. All right, let's execute this code. There you go. If you check the text which was printed, it had all the languages, how search works, business, advertising, about, privacy, and terms, which was all below the element WE. Let's say we just change this to above. And now let's run this code. All right. So it has three texts and multiple icons. Because those icons does not have text, we are not getting the text. If you notice, the result that we have got is entirely different. The reason is we have used above. Let's say now we use toLeftOf. Again, the only links which are to the left of the element WE have been written down. toLeftOf, irrespective of it being above the element or below the element, it is giving us the value. Same way, if I use near, it will give every element which is near to that element. So only the languages were near to that element. Everyone else were far away from the element. Near has a default range of 50 pixels. If we want to increase or decrease the range, we can add a parameter to near. The method is overloaded, where we can provide the radius in pixel of a circle of range around the element. What we also need to understand is, how does this relative locator work? So basically this works based on the x and y coordinates. If an element is above the reference element, which means the y has to be closer to the origin, because in our system, top left is considered to be 0, 0, which means whichever point our WE is at, if I have used above, it needs to have my y lesser than y coordinate of this element. If I have used below, it has to be greater than the y component of WE. Similarly, if I want to have right of, the element needs to have x coordinate greater than WE. And for left, it needs to have the x component lesser than WE. This is what I am saying. But how can you trust me? So let's do this in code. Let me use above. So if you check the y coordinates, everything has to be lesser than this 426. And yes, it is so. If I change above to below and execute this, what you will notice is all the y coordinates are greater than the number. There you go. See, all of them are greater than 427, right? Similarly, if I use for left, my x coordinates are always lesser than 499. And if I use toRightOf, my x coordinate will be greater than the one. So it is 499. And if you check, all of this has value greater than 499. All right, that's all for today. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and share. I'll definitely be back with some new exciting videos. Till then, happy coding.